special horror stories in New Year parties. Paranormal activity and fears are lived 365 days a year, even while you are spending time with your family, enjoying the joys with all members, your pets, and other loved ones. El Tupa. This happened in the Moderna neighborhood in Monterrey, Nuevo León, Mexico, where they tell us this. When I was a child, we always met at my grandparents' house to receive the New Year. It was still early, and my uncle went to buy some last-minute things to our warehouse. The family reunited. That night, the children went running to some abandoned house, going in and out through the patios. We were just going out through a corridor and almost coming out in front. And suddenly, we saw that in the part where the house had no roof, a giant bird passed by, very short, in fact, almost touching the roof of the shingles. We quickly returned to my parents' house, very scared. We arrived and we didn't say anything because we didn't want to be scolded for having entered to that dark place without permission. What we saw made no sense, but almost at the same time that we entered the house, my uncle was returning from the store, running very quickly. Very scared, we all asked him what was wrong. He replied that he had just seen a woman in the corner flying, dressed in black, very close to where we had seen her. The family told him that surely he was already drunk, but he didn't drink at all. In this neighborhood, there are many legends of witches. Perhaps that was what we saw the same night, but no one knows for sure. Another story that I will tell you was very strange. This one took place in Coahuila, Mexico. Since my grandfather moved to his ranch, he rarely comes to visit us in the city. So on special occasions, such as New Year's Eve, we were going to visit him at his ranch. Once, we arrived at his ranch, and he wasn't there, but my other uncles were there. But no one knew where he was. Shortly after, we saw him arrive in his truck. He told us that he went to visit another friend who also had a ranch, a man of money who had just bought the ranch just a few months ago. A very nice man. That night, we had dinner and shared a very pleasant time. On January 1st of the year, my grandfather was awake because he used to get up early, just like my father. So, the two of them went for a walk around the ranch. At hours, they returned. Both of them were very scared. They tried to hide it, but the children recognized that something was happening. My mother and other aunts tried to distract us while they went outside to talk about what happened. I managed to get out and hide behind a tractor to be able to listen to the conversation. My father and my grandfather told us that they had gone out to see the ranch as always. However, in the meantime, my grandfather insisted on visiting his new friend, the owner of the other ranch. My father said no, because they were probably still sleeping. It was still very early in the morning. But my grandfather insisted. Upon arriving at the place, they realized that smoke was coming out of the little house that was in the back of the ranch, and they saw an old lady coming out of the ranch. She greeted them, raising her hand, and continued her path. As soon as my father and my grandfather entered the neighbor's house, they realized that no one was there. Everything was quiet. The two of them slowly walking inside the house, asking if there was anyone there. And when they reached the dining room, they found something very creepy. The neighbor's bodies, along with those of his other two children. They realized that they had taken their lives with some sharp-polished object. Something curious was that there were 3 leaves on the floor, all over the floor. They don't know why. Didn't make sense. They ran out looking for help. They called the police, then they asked for an ambulance. While they remember the little old lady that they had just seen leaving minutes before and that she was no longer anywhere, the police arrived and began to ask the corresponding questions. My grandfather and my father began to narrative everything, and when they got to the bar of the old lady, a policeman approached my grandfather and whispered in his ear that they already knew who that lady was, that if they ran into her, they would not look at her or greet her. The lady was not normal at all, and that it was not the first time that she had been mentioned in another event similar to this one. Nobody knows where she lives. She has only been seen in a few places, and every time she is seen, something like this happens. The family was very careful from that date because nobody knows if the next family will be ours. Have you experienced something like this before? Leave your story down here. Subscribe and like El Tupa.